morning, and welcome to WNHH-FM's Dateline New Haven. I'm your host, Paul Bass, inviting you to look behind the headlines on the stories that make our community tick. Len Fasano has been making New Haven tick for a long time. He's made a decision that means he's either going to do it in a new way or he's going to be able to rest on his laurels. Len Fasano is a state senator from the 34th District, Durham, East Haven, North Haven, major presence in New Haven. For 9 terms, that's 18 years, he's been a state senator, and now he's decided to retire at the end of this year. Len, we have a lot to talk about, from your personal decision to this moment in history in which you're still playing a role. Thanks for joining us on WNHH-FM, Len.
Well, thank you for having me on with this new technology. This is all sort of new to me, doing this Zoom stuff.
Well, you're rolling with it, Len, and yet we didn't let you get out of the legislature without having to do a little of it. So, Len, what made you decide to retire?
Well, it was a very, very difficult decision. Look, I love what I do. I love working at the Capitol. I love the camaraderie. I love the pace. I love the people on both sides of the aisle and the staff.
Mm-hmm.
It was a very, very tough decision. But at the end of the day, I have to do what's right for me and my family. And there comes a time when you have to hang it up. And I think if I waited another 2 years, it would be, well, it's a gubernatorial election, Len, you shouldn't leave while there's a gubernatorial election going on. And then I'd stay for another 2 years. There always seems to be some, I say, conveyor belt of dragons, which will keep you going. And I made a decision in December that perhaps I shouldn't run. And when coronavirus hit, I rethought the position, but I still think it's the right thing to do. And it's, look, to do this job and to do it right, you have to do it 110%, particularly when you're ahead of the minority party, we'll say, in the Senate, because you got to study more, you got to know the bills better, because there could be 40 or 50 bills that could come out. You have to know all 40 or 50. Majority gets to pick which ones they want, which ones they don't want. I have to know them all, and then try to get ahead of them and frame them before they do, and stay on top of them. It takes a lot of work, Paul. It's a lot of weekends. It's a lot of nights. It doesn't leave you a lot of time for yourself or your family. And the pace wasn't slowing down. It was accelerating. And I just felt if I can't do it 110%, I need to step aside and let someone else do it.
There are people who believe that people who make a career out of politics, which I think is a respectable career, not a bad career, but that there's sometimes a danger that they don't know when it's time to leave. That if you're there a while, you've built up experience, you could do a lot of good. You don't need to leave after 2 or 3 terms. But when you've been there a long time and you have a lot of responsibility, you need to be on top of a lot. Sometimes I think what I'm hearing from you, Len, is that maybe you could do 90% next year, and maybe you could do 85% the year after. But that every time there's always a reason people say, hang in there, and that you got to know when to step. Was there anything, often when people make these announcements, people wonder, is something you're not telling us, some big thing that's secret? Or is it just like you felt for a long time, maybe I'm getting to the point where I've done it 18 years and I got a lot of responsibility, I should hand over the reins?
There's no secret. There's no either hidden agenda or some other issue driving my decision. I did think about it after, when we were 18. I did think about it then, and I thought if I run again and we get the majority, I was thinking about retiring. When you get the majority, I would think about retiring. Either way, I was going to pick this year to retire, no matter what happened.
Mm-hmm.
But I did think about it when we were at 18. But I decided, let me see if we get the majority. But I'd only do it for the 2 years. There's just, one politician once told me that politics, the key to it is knowing when to get in and when to get out. And I didn't want to be that sort of athlete who doesn't know when to leave. And I felt that everything inside of my heart and soul told me now was the time. And you can't continue if you think you shouldn't be there, because the work that you have to do, the effort that you have to put in, you're on all the time. You're on no matter what event you go to, and you have to go to a lot of events. So I wanted to go out, if you would, while I still had the energy I have, and hopefully I haven't disappointed people, and hopefully they respect the work that I've done, and that's the way I want to go out.
Well, I wanted to make a joke with you that now that you're stepping down, everyone's going to be nice to you. But the truth is, you're very well liked by both parties. So it wasn't a situation like that. I think that New Haven, I think in Connecticut, we're lucky that it might not always feel that way if you're following the news every day when everyone thinks every argument is the end of the world. But we have a remarkably bipartisan state, I think, in terms of you have honest disagreements, you get mad at each other from time to time, but when something needs to be done, you do it, like healthcare, you gone across the aisle, which brings me really to my next set of questions, Len Fasano, which is that this is one of those crisis moments. I think, is it fair to say in your 18 years, you've never seen as big a threat to our state as COVID-19, correct?
I agree. This truly is historic, and everybody who's been following COVID-19, which is basically everybody, this is historic. And this is something, there's no playbook. This is not an economic issue where we can put all our economic factors in to play. This is some other animal. And this is new. This is a new territory for the world. And everyone's trying to figure out the best way to approach it. But it is different. And look, you're right. We all do come together. All the leaders from all the caucuses and chambers have been talking 3 times a week. The governor's office has been phenomenal. His staff has just been great. I've said this a bunch of times in a bunch of places, and sometimes some fellow Republicans get upset, but the truth of the matter is, it is what it is. I'm never going to twist the facts. The fact here is that this governor and his staff have been very responsive. They've welcomed suggestions. Whether they follow all of them or not is irrelevant, but they
Mhm.
welcome the suggestions and the dialogue, and a lot they have followed. And all the leaders seem to be on the same page on a number of these issues.
That's what struck me from day one. You, Themis Clarity's the Republican leader in the House, and Marty Looney and Joe A to Z. You kind of agreed day one. It didn't sound like you were fighting about what to do. You cleaned the Capitol. You decided people aren't coming back. You decided for now other issues aren't going to be voted on. It sounds like you're waiting to see at what point, because we really don't know if it's a month, 2 months, when people can crawl back out of the shadows. It's not looking like you're going to meet back up in Hartford, but that you still have decisions to make down the road about whether you're going to vote on some matters or if you're just going to leave it to the governor to make decisions for the rest of the term. Do I have that right, Glenn?
Yeah, well, a couple of things. One is that there may be some things we're going to have to vote on relative to getting federal money for social services. We get match from the federal government. I don't know. We have to look at that. So we may have to come back in and vote on that stuff. For federal transportation dollars, we may have to vote some programs out just because those programs might need legislative approval in order for us to get the 3-to-1 match. So those are things we may go back in some special session to vote on, very limited. But a number
Would
of
you be
bills,
able to do that electronically?
I don't think there's a provision that allows us to do that electronically that I'm aware of. You have to hit the button, if you would, that's in front of us, literally the button. So I don't know if that's in the Constitution or state statute.
That's what I wanted to ask you. What powers does the governor have?
Governor has the greatest powers we could give any governor. They said that we've given the governor some of these powers back when they had Ebola, and I don't remember that. But the powers that we've given the governor have been used and very expansive, and that goes till September 12th or 14th, something like that. And he could write any law, he can supersede any statute. He's still governed by the Constitution, so that still is there. But he can, any ordinance, any town ordinance, he could supersede. This governor has been very measured in what he's doing, whether you agree with him or not. He's been very measured. I don't know what
You're
would
saying
be
he's not abusing the emergency powers.
not at all. I mean, somebody asked me what I've given the same powers to Governor Malloy, which is an interesting issue we don't have to go into. But I think for Governor Lamont, I think he believes in his heart and soul what he wants to do is right for Connecticut. I honestly
Mhm.
believe it. But he's an easy guy to approach. He's an easy guy to have a conversation with, and his staff is much easier to deal with in terms of having the conversations because their boss, I don't want to say boss, but the governor is working with them is much easier to deal with. So I think it's been a cool experience. I think for government.
Mhm. And what are you doing now day to day, Len? Are you home right now?
I am not home right now. What I do is I do some hours at the office and then I go back home. We're not really seeing clients, but you have access to the computers and to the files. So I come in and run through stuff. We have people sitting in different parts. Everybody is like 40 feet apart,
Mhm.
and gloves and so forth. We wipe down mail. But there's business. The thing is, a lot of folks are doing refinances, whether it's home or whether it's their house or commercial, because the interest rates are so low. So we're trying to service them and get that done. That requires a lot of legal work to get it done because they don't want to lose their commitment because we don't know if the interest rates will go up. So we're doing a lot of that stuff. And then there's other things that we have to plow through. So we do a little bit of work, a scale down firm, and we come in. I think we're thinking about whether to take a hiatus while this thing hits a peak, for a week or so, and literally just close up. But we haven't made a firm decision on that. But we do.
There's no way you can move all your stuff remote? There's no way you can get all that stuff online?
Some of it you can, but some of it's still hard files. We don't have everything scanned in. We're not that big an office to do that. And we're not a big law office. We're a very family-oriented small office. So we come in for a couple hours and uh, pretty much not a full day according to the way we do things, but we scale back clients coming in of that nature and try to do everything electronically in the parking lot, dropping off documents at the front door, things like
That's like a movie, Len. You're like making a drop off.
that.
But you're feeling okay. You look like you're healthy.
Yeah, I mean, I'm very knock on wood. My daughter
Good.
works in New York City. She moved out about 3 weeks ago, right before COVID hit kind of hard. So she is working in New York City. So she moves out. She works via the video conferencing and whatever else she does on the computer at home. So she's been able to continue to work. She works for a magazine called The Economist magazine.
The
So she's
Economist. I'm a
yeah,
subscriber. What does she do there?
yeah. She does the marketing for it. She does all the marketing efforts for it, the ads, both internet and in the magazine itself. She's very
I
talented.
love that magazine. I'm a
Yeah,
subscriber. Yeah.
yeah, it's very good. So that's
Yeah.
who
And
she.
but right now, Len Fasano's daughter does not have anything over dad because right now you're listening to State Senator Len Fasano and watching him on Zoom video conferencing, just like the younger generation on WNHH FM's Dateline New Haven at 103.5 FM, live streamed at newhavenindependent.org. So, Len, what about legislating with COVID? What kind of decisions do you need to make at the legislature? Or you said that the governor's done a good job. What kind of suggestions are you making to him? What do we need to do that we're not doing as we approach this horrible peak?
Well, I think he's got all the social isolation in place, and I think that we got to watch the numbers and see where the peak's going to come and keep an eye on it. But I think that, and I was actually talking to the DECD commissioner this morning, David Lehman, who's a great guy, about we got to start thinking about the economy post COVID. We eased into this isolation, and at some point, whenever that is, we got to ease out of isolation and get the economy going. And look, lives are important. I get that, and we have to stay safe. But on the other hand, there is the economic factors that are starting to really put pressure on individuals who have sunk their life assets into a small business or a restaurant or a bar. New Haven is known now for their food all over the place. You come to New Haven to get really, really good food, and a lot of those places, not all, but a lot of the places are closed up. And we got to figure out how we're going to help them and get them reopened. So we got to start thinking a little bit ahead of how we're going to get there. And I was talking to David Lehman, simple things like there are going to be a bunch of permits. So restaurant and bar permits are year permits. So some permit that's up now, a restaurant's going to say, look, I'm not going to renew my permit because it's probably not in good shape. It's been closed for 3 weeks. It's not going to pass the public health inspection. I'm not going to spend money for the renewal and clean it up when I can't open. I'm going to wait. So you're going to have those permits backing up. You're going to have
So, are you recommending that they be extended?
well, the authority is given to The governor has given the authority to public health and consumer protection to extend any permit that becomes due during the time of this crisis. They have not done that yet, which gives me a little bit of pause. But
So you
also,
want them to do that?
I would like them to do that, or at the very least, is if you request a permit, let's say we get over the hump, you request a permit, you should automatically be initiated under your old permit, and then until they get to inspect you, you get to operate. And the reason why I say this is that pretty soon you're going to be into the seasonal permits. You have all sorts of camps that, assuming this gets over the hurdle, but all sorts of summer camps. You have summer pools, pool clubs. You have public pools that all have to be inspected, are all going to want to be opened. You have, as they say, day camps, overnight camps. All of those are going to have to be inspected. In a normal year, those are done in May, which is 30 days away. And you have to wait 3 to 4 weeks after you ask for an inspection for them to get there. I can't imagine with all this backup how long that's going to take. And we can't say to businesses, we shut you down for 45 days and now you got to wait 60 days because we don't have enough people to look at them. So we need to have some plan, whatever that is, in process so these folks don't lose more business because we can't hold them up because we're not ready. So whatever
Mhm.
that plan is, I'm asking David Lehman to talk to those folks and figure out how they're going to deal with this because it's coming and how they're going to manage this. It's kind of like Department of Labor, which is another issue on unemployment. We're behind 3 or 4 weeks, and there's a lot of reasons for that. One,
Behind in what?
in getting your checks for unemployment. So if you
Mm,
have
okay.
made an application for unemployment, you're at least 3, if not 5 weeks behind. And there's a couple of reasons for that. One, historic
Mhm.
amount of unemployment applications. Number two, about a year ago, Department of Labor was switching computers and software. It was a nice time. We had the lowest unemployment rate. It was very manageable. We could do it. This hits, and now we're kind of caught short because this new system, not many people know it. So they're trying to bring some old employees back, which is great. Anybody who knows the system called Colbet or Colbot, something like that system. It's
Cobalt.
Cobalt.
Cobalt. That's an
That's
old one.
no one. So they're trying to bring these people back who know that system. So there's a whole bunch of stuff that they're trying to do. Uh, but the onslaught of all those applications is really causing a problem for Department of Labor. And we're going to work through that. So I think we got to get some more attention there. And we got to get attention on how we're going to turn the economy around once this is lifted. So we need a phase in plan. And I think the governor's looking at it, and I commend him for thinking ahead.
Len, do you have thoughts about what the Department of Labor can be doing that it's not doing, in addition to bringing back people who know Cobalt?
I do not. I'm not that well geared. I'm willing to listen. I think all the leaders have said whatever we got to do, we have to do
Yeah.
because people can't be short. Hopefully that money from the federal government's going to come in to help people, but that's a one-time issue.
And it's hard to get, by the way. It's hard to get that money.
It is.
The banks aren't set up to do it quickly. You need a lot of sophistication to document. They call small businesses anything under 500. I've been speaking to people who have 10 people who say they don't even know how to get through the door. This weekend, I
Well,
was dealing with it as a small business guy. The bank was nice. They just weren't ready to do it. They were confused about what to do. The SBA was giving them different rules after they put out their forms. The computer
yep.
systems are jammed.
So let's talk about two things. One, there is the automatic money that's coming to you because if you make a certain amount under 75,000, you're able to get a check directly to you personally. Then we have the SBA, and there's two loans with the SBA. There's the Paycheck Payer Protection, which I have applied for one of my businesses on Friday night. The system crashed 3 times, but I managed to get it in. And a lot of banks are doing that. And that's if you have you submit your payroll defined by a term of art times 2.5.
But
You
then
get
they
that.
switched it. They wanted the quarterly payroll records. Now they want monthly. They came back Sunday night and said they want more.
If, if you give them the year, so if you have a payroll
Yeah.
company, you do the year, you should be fine. But if you have a payroll system, if not, it'll be a little bit more of a headache. So you get 2.5, 70, you'll get that check. 75% of that must go towards payroll. 25% of that can go for utilities and interest on loans or rent, but 75% must go towards payroll. And then you don't have to pay it back. Whatever's not used for those things, you have to pay it back. Then there's the SBA loan, which is a longer process, more involved process, more detailed process, in which you can get a loan up to $2 million at about 3.75%, give or take. And then you pay back that over 30 years, 40 years at a low interest rate.
We're
So
talking
those
to
are the,
Len Fasano, who's the state Senate minority leader. Or do you have another title? It's not 18 to 18 anymore. So you're minority leader again,
I
right?
am just minority leader. That's it.
And this is his final term. After 9 terms in office, he's finishing it up at a moment of history when legislators are dealing with the COVID crisis. We're talking about that on Dateline New Haven, 103.5 FM, live streamed at newhavenpen.org. Harry Jost, our station manager, do we have any comments from listeners?
Yes, we have one from Bob McCormick. He says he asks, "What was your proudest moment as a state senator?"
He was ahead of me, Len. I was going to ask you that.
Yeah.
Thanks, Bob.
Yeah, it's a real difficult issue. And the reason why I say that is I don't define myself by legislation passed, because I've been involved in a lot of pieces of legislation. I've done a lot of things, whether it was Broadwater and Long Island Sound, whether it's working with Marty Looney on medical changes, I should say, to our medical insurance and the way we dispense medicine at levels and bills that we passed now become models for the country. I think what I'm most proud of is the ability to work across the aisle, the ability to have an open mind, the ability to take what people have said and work with those folks and have the confidence that they know that I'm trying to work towards an end that's better for Connecticut. And I think the proud moments are when we're able to all work together on major legislation, bipartisan budget that we passed a few years ago. I think those are the things that I think I'm proud of. And maybe in a very different level, I am a different legislator than I was when I first got elected. When I first got elected, I thought of things kind of almost black and white. Yes, no. And in my legislative years, I learned that just because something made sense to me, others who have different life experiences view that same policy differently. And until you listen to them, until you understand why they view it differently, I don't think you could ever be an effective legislator. So I guess what I'm most proud of is over the years I evolved, and I evolved for the better, and I owe the building that credit. And what they've done for me as a person in changing me is more than I could ever do for it. And I think that's had my ability to work with people across the aisle.
Len,
Yeah.
what you're saying now,
Yes.
is this what has been happening in American politics in the last decade?
At what
Is this
level?
what you're seeing in America?
No.
What are you seeing in America?
I see too much divisiveness on both sides of the aisle and finger pointing. Look, I think I don't know enough of how federal government works. I can't even begin to fathom. And I think that people are miffed why they keep yelling at each other all the time. Connecticut is not like that. Look, we'll have our moments of disagreement. But let's be clear. Those moments of disagreement are not out of the blue. There's a lot of conversation before that happens. There's a lot of conversation after. And everyone knows where they stand. And you got to make your argument known to the public why you don't like this. You can't let someone else frame your objection for you. You need to frame your objection. Then once it's out there, you go into a room and say, you heard my objection. How can we make this bill better? I've staked out my claim. I've staked out my area. Let's talk. But I think to be effective, I think those legislators who say, I'm not bending, I'm not yielding, this is what I believe in, and you're just too stupid to understand my point of view, those are the legislators who are least effective in that building. When you say, let me understand why you object to it, let me understand where your principles are, let's see if we can work together. And sometimes we can't, but it's okay. But you understand that the reason why they're against it, they thought it out. You know, Edith Pregg and I never agreed on a lot of things. She was a state senator in the eastern part of Connecticut. But her heart, soul, and bones, I know she believed what she believed in. And I was okay with that. And I respected her, even though I could not agree with her on many issues. But still, we came together on those that we could. And I think that's what's important.
So why are we going the other way? First of all, is Connecticut, you say we do it better in Connecticut. Is there still that same ability to respect each other and work together without compromising what you believe, but compromising on the specifics to get a bill passed? Has that moved? Have we gotten less able to respect and work together in Connecticut, or is that just a national phenomenon?
It's a national phenomenon. It's not a Connecticut phenomenon. Not
But
at
is it
all.
true in Connecticut as well?
Connecticut local politics? No, I don't see it. Look, Marty Looney, Demis Claridis, the speaker, Matt Ritter, Bob Duff, we all can sit around a table, have a sandwich, talk, laugh, and joke, and say things about any issue, knowing we trust each other. That's critical. That's critical. Let me tell you, the bipartisan budget that we did took 9 months of us to get that done. We had conversations.
Which year was
Paul,
that? 2018 was that?
Yeah, 2018, I think. Yeah. Or 2017. I can't remember. How's that? That's
Okay.
awful.
What was the
But
2-year budget? Okay.
we had conversations that were really deep and meaningful. And you know, we found, oddly enough, although we came at the issue from two different perspectives, we had the same goal. We had the same fundamental beliefs. At one point, well, I won't say it that way, but we came from started from different perspectives, came to the same conclusion. But that became a real good basis of listening to each other, mostly because we almost had to. But it was a very cool moment when we had these conversations. It really was. But we had relationships that existed for years, and we were able to have these conversations. And that happens a lot in the building. So I would say we're not divisive. I mean, look, the press loves to find those issues that it's cat dog. They love it.
So that way people read what we write. If we just write about how boring it is that you guys laughed together and got it done, who's going to read our articles, Len?
Exactly. And there is something to that, right?
But also, how are you going to run for election when your voters are whipped up by Fox News and MSNBC and they want you to be out there slaying the bad guys? Hasn't that changed?
Well, I think I think on the narrowness of each bill, we come to conclusions. They give up a little, we give up a little. Their arguments still are, we need to do this bigger agenda. And our argument is we need to do this bigger agenda. And we can still have those talking points and those discussions. But at the end of the day, when we govern, it's different than what we're talking. Look, if we had the majority and we had a certain number of folks in our majority, we probably would change a lot of different things. But when we get into a room to discuss it, we got to get things done. So we come together. There isn't this, well, you're going to have your view, pass it partisanly. Now, when it gets to budget, maybe we do have those differences. You know, this year they passed a budget, or last year they passed a budget. They didn't even have us in the room. That was their privilege to do that. I get it. And we keep taking shots at their budget. That's okay.
Again, now, Len, you talked about how you evolved over the years and you were more able to see the views of people you didn't agree with so you could understand them and legislate. Does any day stick out in your mind or any particular issue when you can look back and say, I remember that day, that really taught me something when I sat with Edith Craig or so-and-so, and I still thought she was nuts about this, but I really saw where she was coming from, and then we were able to come to that compromise. Does any specific moment like that stick out in your mind?
Yes, I would say criminal justice in terms of second chance,
Mm-hmm.
and also body cameras. So it's a very interesting issue. So what happened was Gary Winfield came in, and we're talking about second chance. And he was saying, Len, I don't think this is going to be a partisan bill. We're going to pass it in the Senate. I don't think any of you guys are going to go with it. I said, Gary, let's have a conversation. So Gary and I and the lawyer for us at the time sat down, and Gary shaved some things off of his bill. I came some way on mine, brought it to my caucus, and we had bipartisan support. Then as we started talking about that, Gary flippantly said, I wish we could do something on body cameras. And I said, well, why can't we? And he said, well, Len, I don't think it's going anyplace. And I said, look, Gary, I believe in body cameras. Body cameras tell a story on both sides. So he said, will you work with me? And I said, yeah. And we shared stories, just like on Second Chance, we shared stories. There are kids who are trying to get into college who get some stupid thing that is a blemish on their record for life. Why are we going to do that? They were stupid kids. They do stupid things. That's why they're kids, right? And they should be blemished for the rest of their life. And we need to acknowledge that type of stuff. Those were conversations that we had that sort of opened the door, and commonality exists no matter what economic strata you're in. That led to body cameras, and where this was, we're almost halfway through session or better. And Gary ran with the ball, did a great job, but we were able to pass it through both chambers with the support of the police chiefs, with the support of police. It was an amazing thing that we got going. And then we got money to do it, to encourage municipalities to do it. That was one of those moments that
that's a good example of a case where Len, the Republican, found common ground with an issue defined by a Democrat as a priority, and you found the ways that you had common ground. And thanks for that example, Len Fasano. Can you think of examples where the Republicans really cared about what is defined as a Republican issue, where you were in a room with Democrats and they found common ground, you're able to pass it? Fiscal responsibility.
I think the budget is one. We have a constitutional spending cap, which is now defined. We have a bonding cap, and we all agreed to put it into our bonding covenants so that no one could back out. So I think that the bottom line is yes. I think that having conversation of why it's important, and by the way, we can see that now because we had $2.7 billion in a rainy day fund. So even if this session, or I should say this fiscal year, we end up with a $500 million deficit, we can pay it out of our rainy day fund and still have $2.2 billion left in our rainy day fund, which is extraordinarily healthy.
So that is a good thing. That's one of those things you say doesn't make news, but instead of the legitimate stories about when there's precarious finances, that is a nice thing to stop and say. We can cover a $500 million deficit and still have as big a rainy day fund as actuarial tables suggest we should have, correct? If we're left with 2.2 billion, we're not in a hole, right?
Exactly. And that's something, talking to them, that we were able to break through. So I think that, that's an example. And there are other examples out there of where, once again, it's conversations, bringing people together. Bills, sometimes as something comes out and a group doesn't like it, they tend to both don't talk to each other, and they go in opposite directions. And it takes folks who understand both issues to bring people together. And the ones who do that are the ones who I think tend to have the respect of knowing you bring people together. And sometimes you get there and sometimes you don't. And it's okay if you don't get there. It's what the process is about.
Hey, Len Fasano, before I let you go, I want you to rate the governors. You served under Governor Rowland. You served under Governor Rell. You served under Governor Malloy. You served under Governor Lamont. What were the differences with the four of them?
I think Governor Rowland was a natural politician. He was a really, really good politician. I mean, he was able to communicate with folks, very down to earth guy. He was, he had a way about him, and you could tell by his political career how quickly he rose to the ranks. He just had this way about him, this aura about him.
I agree with that.
Why he did what he did is beyond my scope. He didn't have to. So I would say, politician-wise, he was extraordinary. He made bad personal decisions and compounded those personal decisions. So that's what I would say about him. I think he had great economic policies, but he just made bad personal decisions.
Policy-wise, he's an example of what you talk about, that he was a conservative, and he definitely, especially in his first and second terms, had an ability to do legislation with liberals. whether it was
Yeah,
environmental legislation, whether it was some of the criminal justice stuff, whether it was urban aid that might not have been the way Democrats would have written it. But I think he did govern in that mode. I think
I
that people
agree.
don't know that because of his personality, but yeah.
Yeah, and look, he's as I said, he is a very charming guy when you meet and talk to him and get to know him. I mean, that's the first year I ran, and he came to a bunch of my fundraisers. Um, the one thing I remember he said to me once is, I said, we were going, I forgot where the heck it was. And he said, come on, we're going to stop by this fair. We just stopped by some fair, walked around. And he said to me, and everyone wanted to take pictures with him. And I said, listen, all this attention, how do you deal with it? He said, remember, they love Governor Rowland. They may not like John Rowland, but they love Governor Rowland. And I always thought about that. And I said, boy, he's kind of got it on. He understands the issue. So I think he made very bad personal decisions. But look, you live by those as much as you live by anything else.
Governor
So
Rell.
Governor Rell was the right person at the right time. The state was looking for that cuddly, friendly grandma type of person coming off of Governor Rowland. And she suited that purpose very, very well. She was a calming voice, a very motherly, maternalistic type of person, and I think led to her popularity. Her chief of staff, Lisa Moody, who I happen
was
to
the
like,
hit was the hit person.
she was the hit person, knew her role very, very well. Tough decisions. Governor Rell would take a hiatus, and Moody would do what she had to do. But they were very good to me. They gave me a chairmanship of Broadwater, which I'm always thankful for. But Governor Rell just did not want to pick a fight. Got along with folks, made deals, moved government along. I think at the economic crisis, I wish she was a little tougher at the end of her years when we started to get that slide. I think we could have stopped some of the spending. I don't think she signed a budget once, which she should have vetoed. But look, she was very nice. She was very good to me. I liked her a lot. I do miss her. I think she's a terrific person.
How about Malloy? I know you don't
Malloy,
love the guy. How did he do as governor?
let me tell you something. Malloy had the best work ethic, not only of any governor I've known, but most people I know. This guy knew the issues. He knew
Mhm.
them solid. He knew them cold. Um, one time he said in an article, and he has a sense of humor. One time he said in the article, he said, uh, Len wants his cake and eat it too. So I sent him a big sheet cake, and I had a message about the budget written on it. And I took a piece out and I said, you're right. I always do want my cake. And I couldn't resist at least taking my piece of it. And he called me up and laughed about it. This was like at the height of us screaming at each other. So he had a sense of humor. But, he had one of the best, out of all the governors, he knew the issues extraordinarily well, no matter what the issue was. And he had the facts. He knew where he was going. He had an agenda, and either you're with them or you're against them. And even with the Democrats, if he had a 10-point agenda and they were 9 points with them, well, they weren't with them unless they're with them with that 10th point. So you got to respect that. And you got to respect he believed what he believed in, and he was going all out for it. He wasn't a type of guy that you could chummy up to and put your arm around like Rowland was that type of guy. You could go and sit down, have a beer, sit at a barbecue. Governor Rell was not Governor Malloy. He was total work, sort of prickly, sort of cold, determined, and that's the way he was going. And
Mhm.
just get the hell out of my way.
And Lamont, before this crisis, do you see a different Lamont in this crisis from before? Or is this crisis better suited to Lamont than, let's say, getting a transportation plan through the legislature?
I think Governor Lamont in his heart and soul always wants to do the right thing. I don't think he's there to say, here's my agenda for A or here's my agenda for B. I think he wants to try to do the right thing. I think he searches for that from time to time. And, I think he'd do better if he sat down and planned ahead. But I think that he is a laid back guy. He is
Excuse me?
he's a laid back individual. He's extraordinarily easy to talk to, easy to approach. Very nice when you get him on the phone, very nice in person. Just I call him, he's a typical 60 guy, not age of 60, but 60s type of generation, just laid back. Nothing phases the guy, which is a very calming effect, I think, particularly now with this
Mhm.
COVID. He's just a very laid back guy, but I think he wants to do the right thing, and I think he'll listen to everybody. I think he'll have these conversations. Um, I think that if any criticism would be, I think he needs to plan a little better ahead. I think he needs to probably take a more stronger voice, particularly when we get out of this COVID, to say, here's the plan. This is how we're going to get the economy going. This is how we're going to move it along. I haven't seen that voice from him yet. I think that it was a big learning curve over the past almost 2 years. I think it's a big learning curve. I think he learned a lot about the legislature. I always told him that you can't beat legislation. So the LOB, Legislative Office Buildings, where we create the monsters, and then the Capitol is where they get voted in. And I always told him you can't defeat the monsters when they get to the Capitol. You got to take the legs out when they're the LOB. And I think now he understands what I mean by that. Where before he would sit back and wait when they got to the Capitol and try to attack some of the ideas he didn't like. But by then the momentum has already been gone. The enthusiasm for the bill is already in its peak. Alliances have been forged. Deals have been made. You can't stop it. It's already got a life of its own. So it's like the Frankenstein. It's alive. You got to get at that operating table early and start smoking it out at that level. You can't wait till the end. Otherwise, the game's over. And I think he learned that. And I think he's learning who he can trust and who he can't trust in that building. And that's huge.
Len Fasano, what's next for you after this term?
Um, I don't know. Look, it's going to be so hard to walk away from this. It really is going to be hard to walk away from this. I'd love to be involved in government in some way if the cards ever come out to be. That doesn't mean elected office, but I'd love to be involved in government in some way. I just love to serve. I'd love to think about policies. I'd love to think of uniqueness of ideas. I'd love to think how we're going to move Connecticut forward. I enjoy it so much, and I study it all the time. Whether I'm sitting on a couch or watching TV, I'll just Google things, read articles. In fact, this whole weekend, I was reading how states are bouncing back from the COVID virus. What are they doing? Are any states thinking about plans? And the most I read actually came out of Governor Cuomo, but more, hey, we've already started it. We've put a team together. This is what we're thinking. And there's some federal ideas, but there's no state ideas out there, which is kind of interesting. So I'm looking at what are the things that we can do. And I thought about all these permits, and I said I talked to David Lehman this morning about it. So I'm looking at that type of thing. So I'm always looking for things to move the state forward, whether it's medical, whether it's just governance, whatever it is. And I think I got more to offer, just not in the elected capacity. So I don't really know. And if it doesn't come that my way, I'll go back to practicing law and running the businesses I have. Not that they're not challenging, they are, and be with my family. One of the reasons I have grandkids in Florida. I don't get to see them that much because you have to go to events. This is going to allow me to take the weekend off. I want to take a long weekend and go to Florida on a Thursday night and be with the grandkids and come back Monday morning. I can do that without much harm. Where before there was too much calling upon me to get done.
Len Fasano, thanks so much for joining us by Zoom, because you're one of those tech-savvy people. Thanks for joining us on Dateline New Haven today. So after this year, they're not going to know you as Senator Fasano. They're going to know you as Lenny Fasano, and I'm still going to consider an honor to know you and deal with you because I'm very fond of Len Fasano, not just Senator Fasano.
Oh, that's very kind.
Thank you, the John Rowland thing. And I want to also thank Harry Droz, our station manager, the miracle man behind the controls, who makes these shows work. Thanks as well to all the folks who've been listening. We're going to take it out with the Afro-Semitic Experience, performing I Wish I Knew How It Would Feel to Be Free from the group CD, A Plea for Peace. This is Paul Bass inviting you to fly free with us all day and all night. WNHH New Haven's home.